Hi, good afternoon. How are you? It's the John Gaunt live show. Then it becomes a podcast. You can hear it on audio. You can also watch it in widescreen on YouTube, on your TV at home as well. Gosh, how technology has moved on. Today, the question, UK shoplifting epidemic. How the hell do we stop it? Well, I've got some ideas, but I want your ideas as well. So feel free to send a comment on now on Twitter, Facebook, or on my YouTube. It's John Gaunt TV. If you're listening later, you can still get in touch with me in all those areas. And thanks for your comments. It's really making the show take off. Okay, so let's have the facts. Well, retail theft, shoplifting, is completely out of control. Shoplifters are becoming more brazen, violent, and fearless. You've seen them on the telly going into the Apple store and just clearing the bloody place out. There's even a term for that. It's called kamikaze shoplifting. Can you believe it? Major retailers reckon they're losing billions every year. And the latest British Retail Consortium, the BRC crime survey, reports that 20.4 million incidents of shoplifting costing their businesses, they reckon, £2 billion a year. Even worse, the violence and the abuse against shop workers, and I was one of them this year, so I know how hard that is, has skyrocketed, I love that word, by 50%, with over 2,000 attacks per day. There's an epidemic out there. And why? Well, I'll tell you why. It's quite simple. There's a lack of consequences. Criminals, especially young lads, seem to feel emboldened by the fact there's weak enforcement. So many shopkeepers tell me, you phone the coppers and say, I've got a shoplifter, the coppers don't come. Ask the coppers about it, and they say, well, we can't. We're under-resourced. Then there's kamikaze shoplifting. That's where they just go in, kick everything off the shelves, kick the shelves over, and take everything. Do you remember when Apple shops first started? Everything was almost tied down. Well, that doesn't put them off anymore. And of course, the final reason why this is happening, we've got soft or rainbow laces policing. And when they get to court, if they get to court, and don't forget, they weren't even getting sent to court if they'd nicked less than 200 quid's worth of stuff. But if they get to court, they get a little slap on the wrist. They don't get sent down because the prisons are full. So who's failed us? I'll tell you who's failed us. Successive governments, successive home secretaries, successive police and crime MPs who are in charge of it. Let's stop the namby-pamby policing. Let's get the police on the streets. Let's get these people off the streets. I'm not suggesting they should all go. And by the way, I've got quite a lot of sympathy for some people who shoplift, which I'll talk about in a moment. But the solution is years old now. It's called zero tolerance policing, the broken window philosophy. If you've been a fan of mine for years, you'll know I went to New York after 9/11 and I met a man called Bill Bratton. Now, he doesn't get much of the acclaim for what happened in New York, but it was him, along with Mayor Rudy Giuliani, whose credibility has taken a bit of a dive recently, but it was them who came up with this idea of the broken window philosophy. If you leave one window broken, the next day you'll have two windows. One tube carriage with some graffiti on it on the subway, then you'll have two or three. They went in carriage by carriage, window by window, and cleaned up New York. Why don't we do the same? Well, we could have done the same ages ago because Bill Bratton applied to be the commissioner of the Metropolitan Police. They wouldn't give him the gig. I can't remember who the Home Secretary was at the time, but he thought it should go to a Brit. Why? Bill Bratton is a Vietnam veteran. He's as hard as nails. He's an old chap now. I met him on the streets of the Big Apple. He scared the SH1T out of me, and I was just interviewing him. I was fascinated by his whole philosophy. And that's what we need in this country. I'm not saying lock them up and throw away the key What I'm saying is zero tolerance. So you don't let somebody off if they just nick something under 200 quid. You come down on them. Are you going to join in today? Come on, we're getting you going now. Let's have your comments. How do we stop it? And because you might think, oh, shoplifting, Gaunty, how important is it? I'll tell you how important it is. It ends up costing you and I a fortune. As you know, when I've been down on my luck recently, I worked in a very posh supermarket. And do you know what they said there? They said, whatever you do, if you see a shoplifter, don't do anything. Maybe go and tell the security guard. They had a security guard, lovely fella, but like you could blow him over. He wasn't a very big, tough, intimidating guy. But go and tell him, but don't you challenge them. Why not? Because your life, this is what they said, your life is not worth a bag of shopping. What they really meant was they didn't want a lawsuit if I or another member of staff got injured. So they basically were giving a green light to shoplifters. So they used to come in and you'd watch them literally filling up a trolley with champagne, bottles of whiskey, and you know they were going to do a runner. This is ludicrous. But what the supermarkets do, and we're not going to lose any sleep over the supermarkets, they're making such a lot of profit, and they've just laid off thousands of people, haven't they? I think Sainsbury's have laid off 3,000. Tesco's have just laid off a load as well, because they price this in. So the cost of living is already crippling us all. Now we've got a scenario where the prices of the goods are put up to combat the shoplifting. We've got to clamp down on it. And the other thing is, if you don't clamp down on it, you've got a situation where people think, oh, well, it's not really a very important crime. We may as well all do it. And if you go down that line, when you're thinking about broken windows, society just falls apart. You see, because we could concentrate, and no doubt the 6 o'clock news and the other news stories today will concentrate on the kamikaze attacks, you know, where the lads go in and they just rip everything off the shelves. And if anybody gets in their way, they give them a kicking on the way out. There was even a case of a girl who got bottled, trying to stop a shoplifter. So they'll concentrate on that. But what happens is it's everybody's at it. So although ordinary, decent people say, oh, I'd never do that, there's lots of people now who would and are doing. And the price of our food goes up. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm going to have a go at the supermarkets here because I think the supermarkets could do more to stop this happening. Some of them now have got big, burly security guards on the door. Even my local Tesco, even on a Sunday afternoon, they've got people. But it's got to a ridiculous stage. I had to get some of those washing tablet things. You know, the things that you put in. They come in a box and you've got to put them in the washing machine. While we have automatic washing machines and soap dispensers is beyond me. But evidently we're not using them anymore. Lisa's now told me because they're made of microplastics and they're going to kill the whales and kill the ocean. So we're not using it anymore. But we were. I went in to get a box because we'd run out, right? And it was in a security tag. Like all the wires around it. So people are nicking stuff like that. It's been like that with razors for ages. But it's kind of sick, isn't it? There's also, in a supermarket in Coventry, the baby food has those alarm detectors on them. You know, like they have on bottles of spirits. I remember when I worked in the supermarket, somebody said to me, what would you do if you saw somebody nicking, John? And I said, well, depends what they were nicking. And the guy looked at me completely askance and said, what do you mean? I said, well, if it was a woman nicking baby formula or nappies, I might be tempted to help her. And I was only half joking because I'm not going to lose sleep over the profits of Tesco's or Sainsbury's or the posh supermarket where I worked, because that's the other thing. They price the shoplifting in. They also price the discounts in. So if they can sell something at £5 cheaper or over 50% cheaper than what it's on the shelf for, why isn't it at that price already? Do you follow where I'm coming from? You know, the yellow stickers go on and the price comes down. I think it's despicable. I think it's despicable. So I'm not going to lose sleep over the supermarkets. But why I'm annoyed or worked up or want to get on top of this whole problem is because of what it does to society. If you think it's perfectly acceptable to go into a supermarket and nick a pound of fillet steak, I mean, that's the thing. They've even got security bleepers on the steaks, haven't they? And on the meat. It's a sad, sad world. Now, I know people are skint. And I was really, really skint for the last couple of years. But it's not an excuse to steal, is it? But it's as if the supermarkets are almost making it easy to steal. I haven't got any comments yet. I mean, I know I've got over 100 people watching live at the moment. Can you put up some comments just to test it's working? Even if you're saying, hi, John, that'll do. Because I'm a bit concerned about that at the moment. Anyway, let me just go back to my point. If you begin to turn a blind eye to shoplifting, it is the broken window. Do you then turn a blind eye if you're walking home one night and somebody is nicking a car or keying a car? Do you see where I'm coming from? And this is where society breaks down. And I would say the reason we've now got kamikaze, if that's what you want to call it, shoplifting, is because they can get away with it. We, the decent silent majority, are not arguing against it. And we've got to. Society is about rights and responsibilities. I know the supermarkets are ripping us off. I'm with you on that. But it's no excuse to walk into the Apple store, into any store, and just take whatever you want. What have we got? Matt, security in restaurants and supermarkets, etc. I never saw anything like this when I was young. We didn't need it, Matt, because people had a decent moral code, a decent spine. Maybe it was because we all went to Sunday school. I don't know. The Baron Flight says, I can hear you, Gaunty, but I'm driving, so I can't comment at the moment. That's fine. I'm perfectly happy to talk for half an hour just for myself because I'm usually more entertaining anyway. But I'm joking. But what I need to know is how are we going to stop it? I say zero policy, zero tolerance policy. So when I met Bill Bratton, New York, do you remember in those days? You remember when we used to watch Kojak? We used to stay in, didn't we, to watch Kojak? And then was it Starsky and Hutch? But it was Kojak mainly in New York. Yeah, book him. Yeah. No, he wasn't that. Book him, Dano was Hawaii 5-0. What am I on about? But anyway, New York was a cesspit. First time I went to New York, it was horrible. It was as scary as hell. Let me just tell you, scary. Went back a few years later when Bill Bratton had been around. This was after the time I met him. I met him after 9/11, about 6 months after I went to New York to do some radio shows with BBC London. And London was having the same problems that New York was, not even on that scale. But you know what they say? What happens in America eventually happens here as well. But there was the first time I went, you wouldn't, Times Square and around there, you must have done all that touristy and Broadway and all the rest of it. You wouldn't go down any of those side streets. You stayed on the main thoroughfares. And even then, you kept your hands in your pocket and you were very much aware of your surroundings. When I went again after 2 or 3 years of zero tolerance, it was incredible. You could go down the side streets. You could find the little Irish bars and have a few Guinnesses or whatever. You could really enjoy yourself. It felt safer than London. And when I said to Bill Bratton the time before that, when I met him, I said, well, how the hell do you do it? How do you clean up the subway with all that graffiti? Like an episode of Fame. He said, we did it one carriage at a time. And it can't, or coach, I think he called them. It was like Clint Eastwood. Clint Eastwood was coming into town and he cleans the town up. Then he disappears into the sun and the haze of the desert after killing all the baddies. That's kind of what you want, isn't it? Whereas what we've got in the match just said, that sounds like London today, Gaunty. Well, London is a cesspit. It's an SH1T hole, not just in the centre of London, but all over London. It's been left to the feral, the feckless, the freeloaders, and quite a few are foreigners, if I'm honest with you, who have wrecked and are running amok in our capital. But Matt, it's not just London. It's the same in Coventry. It's the same even in Leamington Spa. Can you believe it? Oxford, hellhole. You're scared, especially with mobile phones. I'm always saying to my girls, don't use your mobile when you're walking along the street. You know, these kids who walk along and I say kids, young women texting, and these monsters come through on these powered cycles and just nick the phones. You must have seen it on telly. It's kamikaze cycling, if you want to call it something. What I don't understand is the police can see these bikes. They don't just suddenly appear like osmosis, do they? They have to cycle. Well, they don't really cycle because you don't actually pedal, do you? But they must be coming down other streets. Why aren't the cops stopping them? Because all of those bikes, particularly the ones used by Deliveroo and the other food distributors. Another question, I'll do a podcast on that one day. Why do you need home delivery? I don't understand it. I understand why people have takeaways and go and get a pizza or a Chinese or whatever you want to get. But does it make your life so much improved to have it delivered by some bloke who can't speak English and it's then tepid by the time it gets to you? I just can't see it. I can't see why home delivery is so massive in this country. Are we just a bunch of lazy so-and-sos? Have we just turned into the real couch potato? But anyway, they're on their bikes. I'm not suggesting all of them are thieves, but we see these kids on the bikes. Why aren't the police, which is what they would do in New York, being proactive, arresting the kids or stopping the kids and saying, where do you get that bike from? Has it got an engine bigger than whatever the specification is? Yes, it has. Sorry, we're confiscating it. That's what should happen before the crime takes place, because they've already committed a crime by using the bike. I don't know what the exact amount is that they're meant to power them, but these are dangerous. I've got blind mates who have been knocked over on the pavement by these morons because they can't control the bikes. This is zero tolerance. This is the broken window philosophy. Bill Bratton said to me, he said, it was amazing. He said, the people we had the most complaints from were the middle class. And then he painted this picture of New York to me. He said, you know, people on their skateboards coming down the freeway or coming down the what do they call it, the sidewalks. They didn't like it when my officers told them to get off their skateboard, pull up their leggings and stop thinking that they're in Fame, yeah, or in Studio 45. He said, because you have to clamp down on all crime, all those little minor things. The middle classes hated it. But you've got to be fair and say, no, you've parked on like parking on the pavement. In Coventry, there's no point in having a road or a pavement. Everyone just rams up onto the pavement. It's wrong. It's inconsiderate. It's greedy. It's selfish. It's kamikaze parking. But no one gives an SH1T. Everyone's so busy. I've got to get back from my Deliveroo. What am I having tonight? Oh, I'm having Thai. Oh, how nice that'll be. Yeah. We've all got to be a bit more responsible, especially if we want to clamp down on these yobbos. I live in Stevenage, says Matt. Never been the best place to live, but it can be really dangerous now at night. You shouldn't feel like that. You should be able to walk the streets. Like I say, when I went the second or third time to New York, I felt totally safe. Found this fantastic Irish bar off Times Square, you know, full of Irish people, New Yorkers, and they're more Irish than the Irish. Yeah, not a touristy place because it's just in a back street. Got hammered, staggered home, no problem, because there are police, and not just police. What they also do in New York, they started putting sort of like wardens on the street. I couldn't tell if they were proper coppers or not. It didn't matter. Well, we're cutting that. I don't really like the hobby coppers, if I'm truthful with the PCOs, SOs, but they do a service. We need more of them. When I represented the police, when Theresa May was cutting a Tory cutting the party of law and order, my arse, 20,000 jobs she cut. Do you remember? We did the PC pleb campaign, got it on all the front pages. but she still went ahead. And then, of course, Boris tried to reverse it, but we haven't got enough coppers. But it's also down to us, as I keep saying, the decent silent majority, to say, I'm going to behave myself. I'm not going to tolerate that. I'm not going to pee in a doorway, yeah, because I'm drunk. I'm going to find a toilet. I'm going to find, and there's plenty of toilets. It's just madness what is going on. I'm not going to be dropping litter everywhere. It's all about the built environment. It's been proved. If the built environment you're living in is nicer, is cleaner, doesn't have any graffiti or not much graffiti, and it can't be an ideal world. I know that. But that's the other right thing. The veneration of that Banksy. I mean, he's good. But because he's good, everyone's now got to be thinking, oh, all graffiti is good. No, it's not. Some feral twit with an A sprays his name, Nooks or Nickies or New, yeah? Thinking he's in New York himself, a New York that no longer exists, or LA, yeah? Thinks he's down with the boys, yeah? It's okay for him to spray can everywhere with his tag like a feral pussy cat. No, get him off the street. There's one in Coventry, right? It's called, he graffitis all over Coventry. I don't know if it's a he, might be a she. The word smile, right? I'd like to grab this dickhead, right? I'd wipe the smile off his face. I'd give him 6 months inside. Yeah. And the local paper, which is useless, it's not even good enough now for putting in the cat litter tray, the Coventry Telegraph, they've almost made him into a sentence. Who is Smile? Who is he? We know we seek him here, we seek him there, we seek him everywhere, as if he's the bloody Scarlet Pimpernel. He's a yobbo. I was down in Oxfordshire, in my daughter's little village. This bloke had whitewashed the back of his house. It goes down like what do you call those things? Like a gully, like a little entry thing, right? And so he's whitewashed the back of his house. It's all pebble dash. I thought, oh, that's nice. He's making it look a bit nicer. Nice, fair, fine. And I feel perfectly safe walking through there. But then I came back the other weekend and somebody's put their tag on his brand new wall. I'd be going ape, wouldn't you? I can't remember what its name. I didn't remember, but it's in bright red spray paint. I went 2 weeks later, it'd gone. Obviously, he had painted it over. Back again last week, it's back again. This isn't just a little village. What is going on? I'll tell you what's going on. The parents, if they're around, haven't told their kid, who's probably some middle-class little twerp going to a private school, don't act as if you're in South Central. You're not. You're in South Oxfordshire, you little prat. But it's everywhere. And I tell you what it is. It's because it becomes the prevailing culture. Just like all this, in it. Can you get me? Can you get me? Instead of saying, please, may I have? It's can you get? Can I get? If any kid spoke to me like that, I'd just smack them. No, you can't just get. It's please and thank yous. I bet you're thinking, oh, God, Gaunty, you're so old-fashioned. Am I old-fashioned? Or do I just have manners? I can't bear it. I literally can't bear how this country is going, especially in our big cities. People are just allowing it to happen. And why? I tell you why, because it's zero tolerance. If all of us said we're not having that guy who's had the red paint on his wall, if all of us said we're not going to accept this, all the tags like smile in Coventry, I bet that twit with an A has put that all over his, in our days, it'll be our satchel or our rucksack, because he's obviously proud of his tag. Let's find out who he is. Just send a memo around every school saying, have you got an idiot who writes smile everywhere? Boom, bang, charged, sorted, chop his hands off. It's, metaphorically speaking, it's Sharia law in practice. The Baron Flight says, ban spray cans and chewing gum. Yeah, I understand where you're coming from, but why? Why should you ban a spray can for a decent person to use who might want it for a legitimate reason? It's like chewing gum. No, it's like Idris Elba. Did you see him? Idris, shut the F up, right, mate? And carry on being a good actor. Don't start coming out with your quasi-social work view of the world. His bright idea to stop knife crime is, well, knives don't need to have a point. Well, he's kind of got a point, hasn't he? But it's kind of missing the real point. What knives don't need to have is morons stabbing each other or machetes. It's like going back to what happened with Axel, the killer up there in Southport. It wasn't the knife. It wasn't Amazon who killed those children. It was him. And the blood is on the hands of people like Starmer, who didn't speak up quickly enough. Just like all those people who are in prison because they reacted. Some of them should be because they were yobbos, but not all the hurty words people. We've got it all round the wrong way. But we have to take responsibility. Each and every one of us. We need to take responsibility. We need to say, I'm not going to let my children behave like that. Am I right? Am I just an old fart? Let me know. Lack of consequences. They feel completely emboldened. So they've gone into those Apple stores, nicked one iPad or one iPhone, got away with it, and thought, well, let's just go and empty the whole bloody shop. Then you've got a police officer that if they bother turning up, if they've got the time to turn up, if they're not too busy with distance training or penalising motorists or checking the ULIS cameras, if they do turn up and they get them into court, they're not going to get a decent sentence. And I'm not talking about locking up thousands of kids, but it's like in the movies, isn't it? If you get taken to a police station, I mean, we've all seen these stories where the dad finds out the kid's been being a yobbo, takes them to the police station, they get a right bollocking, and then it turns them round. That's what we need. What would be wrong with that? Whereas we've got a situation where people are just running amok. Take some more views. By the way, thank you very much indeed. All of you who have been buying me a coffee. Don't forget, if you want to help out, I'll put the thing up on the screen now. It's www.buymeacoffee.com/John Gaunt. Anything from a £5 upwards. It's just going to help me keep these podcasts going. And as you know, we're going to start having guests soon as well. And hopefully get you on the phone so you can comment in person. And I know today I've done the show at 4. I'm just playing with the times at the moment, if I'm honest with you. I want to get into a schedule. I'm thinking of 7 o'clock every night because the one show's on then, and I can't bear that program. I don't know about you, but the missus likes it, and so does the mother-in-law. So it'd be quite good for me to escape from that for a moment. But what's happened? So if you want to buy me a coffee, feel free. And I want to say thank you to all these people who have been doing it. So thanks a lot to you lot as well. And if you're listening later on the repeat show, please feel free to watch the videos. They're on John Gaunt TV. They're on Facebook and Twitter. Doing very exceedingly well on Twitter, to be honest with you. And please tell everyone that I'm back. Right, that's enough of the adverts. Let's get back to this point. Personal responsibility. This is not rose-tinted glasses, and it's not because my dad was a copper, but we would not have back-chatted to the police. We see the coppers coming, even if we weren't doing anything with Scarpa. Do you know what I mean? That's where we've gone wrong. But we've gone wrong as parents. Well, not me, because I brought up my kids correctly, but there's so many people who haven't. And it's not just working class people, middle class twits. Jemima, what would you like to eat? We're in a motorway service cafe now. Jemima, what would you like to eat? And then she says, can you get me? And then you turn around and Jemima's 3. Jemima gets what mum gives her at that age. It's just ridiculous what is going on. Now, my dad kept me in line. I knew I was in trouble when my mum said, just wait until your dad gets home. Yeah, precisely. Do you remember that cartoon, the American one? It was kind of pre The Simpsons. Wait till your father gets home. It used to be on a Sunday afternoon. Oh, I love that. That was brilliant. So what I'm trying to say is, and I'm not even against all graffiti art. Good graffiti art is great. But tags, where's the art in that? That's just a moron. isn't it? Isn't that just a moron? Yes. Should we tolerate it? No. Let's wipe the smile off Smile's face. And let's clamp down on it. I remember when I first went to Amsterdam, the graffiti was horrendous. These beautiful buildings that house beautiful art and culture and music, and the graffiti was everywhere. I haven't been very recently. I don't know if they've cleaned it up. But if you filthy, it's like even a dog doesn't poo, does it, in its own house or in its bed. A cat, as we all know, if we haven't got a cat, always goes next door to drop a load. Yeah, that's why there's so many neighbourly disputes. But you don't do it, the old expression, don't SH1T on your own doorstep. You don't. But we're kind of almost there now because our kids, and it is kids mostly this, are running amok. We need zero tolerance. We need, and also, so when the coppers say pick that up, I've seen men do this. People who go to into the shop in the morning, and the newsagents come out with fags, and then they undo the cellophane, ignore the thing that tells them it's going to give them cancer, and you see them just drop the cellophane on the floor. What's that about? Or people who smoke on beaches and then leave their tabs all over the sand. It's as if, oh, it's been in my mouth. It's perfectly clean. Say that to you, miss. Anyway, you know what I'm saying? It's just wrong. Personal responsibility. Zero tolerance. Community spirit. That's what we need to build. Matt says 7 o'clock will be good. I'm supposed to be working at the moment. Oh, yeah, I know. It's a bad time. I agree with you. Gruner, Amsterdam is still a dung heap. Rotterdam is far better and cheaper for a cheap weekend. I've only been to Rotterdam once. I think we got the ferry from Hull when I was a teenager. The other ferry trip I went on when I was a yobbo, we went to Boulogne when I worked at Tesco's. Well, when I was a kid, I was a Saturday boy. We got off the ferry at Boulogne, and I think we went to the first bar, and that was it. Got in a fight, nearly got arrested, and then got back on the ferry and came home. But it took all weekend. Mad days, mad days. Talking of Tesco's, when I was working at Tesco's as a Saturday lad, so it's when I was 18, what's that? 40, over 40 years ago, we didn't have shoplifting like that. Well, kind of we did a bit ourselves. I remember I got caught with 2 pounds of sirloin steak down my underwear, right? I was wrong, and I got a right rollicking. In fact, they hung me in the fridge to teach me a lesson. Roger Madison was his name. He's passed away, became a very good friend of mine. He says, oh, you little fat so-and-so. And then he hung me off a meat hook, put the muslin thing they used to put around meat. Put it on a thing. He said, yeah, I'm going, no, I was only 60. Let me go. He said, I'm going to let you go in a minute. And unbeknown to me, they put all the entrails and all the blood and stuff in a plastic bowl under my feet. And then he goes, you watch. You do that again because it's coming off my profit. I'm going to have you. I'm going to kill you, Gaunty. Do you understand? Yeah. I'm sorry, Roger. Won't do it again. And then he let me go. And I thought, oh, I'm going to swing, hanging job. But they put a slip knot in it. So all that happened was I fell into all the meat and the entrails. Taught me a lesson, though. Not completely, because about a week later, he did me again. He locked me in the fridge. And I thought, oh, thick idiot. There's an emergency push. Have you ever been in a butcher's fridge? There's like a bar inside that you can push and it lets you out. I thought, go on then, have your fun. So he puts me out. I can't remember what my misdemeanor was. It was some terrible misdemeanor. The other thing they did was the boning knife. They used to hold your hand down and then do this, go through the different fingers and then purposely just nick you. Yeah. It was to show how skilled they were with a knife, but also to initiate you into the fine art of butchery at Tesco's, courtesy of Mr. Madison. But anyway, he did me again because he got me and he locked me in the fridge. And I thought, oh, off you go. So I heard them. So I stood by the door inside the fridge, right? And pretty scary, with a pig hanging here, half a side of beef here. This was in the days when the meat used to come in and they had proper butchers to chop it up. And they were brilliant butchers. Anyway, and it's dark, right? And it's just this faint, hum. And I thought, it'd be gone in a minute. So I heard him go out, and this was the butchery was on the top of the shop. Yeah, and they bring the meat down. Then I go to push the door. I heard they'd gone. Nothing happened. Pushed it again. Give it a bit more effort. And I'm beginning to panic now, right? It's minus 15 in there, and I'm sweating like a pig, right? More than the pig that's hanging up that's had his throat slit. And eventually the door wouldn't go. Do you know what he'd done? He'd put a meat hook in the other side, so there was no escape. So then I thought, oh, it'll be okay, right? I'm there dressed in my cheesecloth shirt and my Brutus jeans and my spoons, right, with my white coat on. I begin to shiver. I think I'll be back soon. This was in the days when they used to go to the pub at lunchtime and they'd have a skinful. Then they'd come back and slaughter some more animals. Well, chop up some more animals. Anyway, he's in the pub and he forgets I'm there. And you can only survive in those fridges, so they told me, it might be anecdotal, for 20 minutes, right? Half an hour later, they come back from the Holyhead, right? He suddenly goes, we've left the little fat bastard in the fridge. Let's get back. So they run back, right, in their platforms, open the door, and I'm there shivering. So I start putting it on then as if I'm really poorly. I thought I'd teach him a lesson. But he just went, oh, does. And that was it. But then I became their mates. Their mate. I was part of the honorary legion or freeman of butchers. Fantastic. They were fantastic days. Then I got a job in Boots. I'm going off on one here. And I went to work at Boots because I thought it'd be more upmarket. What a prat. I hated it. I hated it. I had to wear a suit, and it's my brother's. It was a pinstripe brown suit, but the pinstripe was painted on. Do you remember those sort of suits? So, because I sat down on my arse so much, there was no pinstripes on the back of my bottom. Hey, I've got it. I'll tell you where we got it. You got it from. If you're from Coventry, what was that boutique where it had cowboy doors on the changing rooms? SMC or something. I got my star jumper from there as well. My 3-star ribbed jumper. But I was fat, so I looked stupid in it. Anyway, enough. Zero tolerance is the answer. Enough of my misspent childhood. Kids have always run a little bit wild, right? And Matt says, I wasn't an angel myself, but I did learn as I grew up. But it seems different these days. People just seem different. Yeah, it's because they get away with it. My dad was like the Terminator, yeah? He was like Clint Eastwood. If he saw you misbehaving, he'd give you a smack round the chops. Or he'd get his truncheon and just give you a little thing on the back of your knees. It made you behave. I don't really see what's wrong with that. Maybe I'm in the wrong. But the streets were safe. Our wives and our girlfriends and our sisters and our daughters could walk home late at night. Even now, my daughter's 30. My oldest one's about 30. She went to London the other day. I said, send me a text, no matter what time when you get back, just tell me you've got back. You shouldn't have to do that, should you? And maybe I'm overprotective. Maybe I'm the prat. But when you hear about the things that happen, and as I say, it's not just in London anymore, is it? It's because there's no consequences. It starts with shoplifting and it ends with murder and rape. And we, the decent, silent majority, need to stand up and say enough is enough. Because our politicians aren't going to do it because they don't live amongst it, do they? I'm going to do another podcast tomorrow, or maybe later today, and I'll put it out tomorrow, about do you trust any politicians? Because I don't. Did you see her yesterday, Rachel Thieves, talking about how things are going to be great, but like tomorrow. In fact, in her case, 50 years. Heathrow, they won't make another runway there. I was on BBC London for 6 or 7 years. We had that debate a million times. It won't happen. And I don't know about you. People often say to me, will you do this? I can't. Well, when I was successful, they say, will you do this for me? I can't pay you. But if it comes off this TV program idea, you'll owe a fortune. And I just got into the thing in the end saying, no, I'd like the jam tomorrow, but I tell you what, I'd like just the scone with a bit of butter on it now. So I think you can pay me something. That's probably why my career ended. But do you see where I'm coming from? Do you see what I'm trying to say here? I hope you do. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. If you are listening on catch up or on the podcast at the moment live, that's great. Keep all your ideas and your thoughts coming into me. Try and catch it also on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel. Just press the button and subscribe. Then you won't miss out on anything. And thank you very much indeed for welcoming me back into your lives. Well, I've got to go. I'm cooking tea tonight. Tuna pasta, now that you ask. All right. Whole meal. I'll see you later. Until then, if you've got kids, give them a kiss, give them a hug. Don't forget to tell them that you love them. And don't be afraid now and again to give them a little clip round the ear. Pretend you're a lioness. Huh? Keep them in check. See you later.